Okay. Where was I? La, 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 la. What he does say is something much more guarded, namely that while speed may sometimes be injudicious, tardiness can never be anything but foolish, if only because it means impoverishment of the nation. In considering the point raised here by Sun Tzu, the classic example of fabulous cunctator will inevitably occur to the mind. That general deliberately measured the endurance of Rome against that of Hannibal's isolated army, because it seemed to him that the latter was more likely to suffer from a long campaign in a strange country. But it is a quite moot question whether his tactics would have proved successful in the long run. The reversal is true, led to Cannanae, but this only establishes a negative presumption in their favor. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. It is only one who is thoroughly acquainted with the evils of war that can thoroughly understand the profitable way of carrying it on. That is, with rapidity. Only one who knows the disastrous effects of a long war can realize the supreme importance of rapidity and bringing it to a close. This is why LBJ sent our boys to Vietnam. You remember when LBJ sent our boys to Vietnam, Sunmi? Sunmi?
LeBron James?
LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson. I will not send American boys to do what Asian boys ought to be doing for themselves. The Texas president, LBJ, he used to, I learned in school last semester that he used to take people to his farm in Texas, and he used to drive like 60 miles per hour, looking backwards and chatting with them with a cigar and driving with one hand and looking back and talking to people and going on super bouncy roads going super fast, scaring the shit out of them. You know, he did that on me. LBJ's a baller, even though he sent our boys to Vietnam to have them all die. Only two commentators seem to favor this interpretation, but it fits well. Okay, look at all the wars in our past on me. How many were like super long and protracted? Just think about recent history. There's two big ones. Yeah, which Iraq one? There. Yeah, Iraq 2 or Iraq Part 2. Do you remember what happened in Iraq Part 1 and Part 2? Part 1 was like, I think George H.W. Bush. It was Kuwait in 1991. No, 1991. Operation Desert Storm. We literally killed all the Iraqis and kicked them out of Kuwait in like a couple days, I think. Right? And then we left. It literally was like a couple weeks maybe of fighting. Shut up. Shut up. And then Part 2, Iraq Part 2 was like Bush the young one and Obunga had to pull him out, and that was like 2010, from like 2001 to 2010. It's like 10 fucking years. Son me.
Venom Snake, sir.
And then Afghanistan after that. We stayed there for like decades. You know, the Russians were in Afghanistan for decades, and then the Americans were there in Afghanistan for decades, right? We were just sitting there. Fantastic. Cool. Did we benefit from having that prolonged warfare? Did we? Do you think?
Snake was there.
Okay, cool. The skillful soldier does not raise a second levy. Neither are his supply wagons loaded more than twice. Once a war is declared, he will not waste precious time in waiting for reinforcements, nor will he return his army back for fresh supplies, but crosses the enemy's frontier without delay. This may seem like an audacious policy to recommend, but with all great strategists, from Julius Caesar to Napoleon Bonaparte, the value of time, that is, being a little ahead of your opponent, has counted for more than either numerical superiority or the nicest calculations with regard to the commissariat.
Chuck, because he was always a head shorter.
What?
What?
Bring war material with you from home, but forage on the enemy. Thus, the army will have food enough for its needs. What? Yeah, he's short. He wasn't even short, though. That was like English propaganda, I think. He was like 5'6", so he's kind of short, but he wasn't 5'1", I think.
Nothing. He was 5'6", GPS tells me.
Yeah, I know, but people were shorter back then. Yeah, he's 5'6".
That's right.
5'6.5" an average height of the time. So he was of average height, Sunmi. I think the thing was like he's 5'1". Wow, guess what shows up next to underneath Napoleon? Guess who's the first person that shows up, Sunmi? Holy shit.
That fake character?
No, it says people also search for.
Dead?
Yeah, all these people are dead, but guess who it is?
French?
No, it's a famous person. Famous world leader.
Putin?
Hitler, Adolf, 5'9". Robespierre, Maximilian, 5'3". Very short, my goodness. George Washington, guess how tall George Washington is? These are people you also search for after Napoleon, but guess how tall George Washington is? No. 6'2". Very tall, wow.
Romulus, that's short.
And that was in the 1700s or late 1700s. And people weren't tall back then because they didn't eat very well. Bring war material with you from home, but forage on the enemy. Thus the army will have enough food for its needs. The Chinese word translated here as war material literally means things to be used, and is meant in the widest sense. This includes all impediments of the army apart from provisions. Poverty of the state exchequer causes an army to be maintained by contributions from a distance. Contributing to maintain an army at a distance causes a people to be impoverished. The beginning of this sentence is not balanced properly with the next. Though obviously intended to do so, the arrangement, moreover, is so awkward I can't help but suspect some corruption in the text. It never seems to occur to the Chinese commentators that an emendation may be, amending it, may be necessary for the sense, and we get no help from either there. The Chinese word Sun Tzu used to indicate the cause of the people's impoverishment clearly have a reference to some system by which the husbandmen seek their contributions of corn to the army direct. But why should it fall on them to maintain an army in this way, except because the state and government is too poor to do so? On the other hand, the proximity of an army causes prices to go up, and high prices cause the people's substance to be drained away. Wang Xi says high prices occur before the army has left its own territory. Cao Kung understands it of an army that has already crossed the frontier. When their substances are drained away, the peasantry will be affected by heavy extractions. Without the loss of substance and exhaustion of strength, the homes of the people will be stripped bare, and 3/10 of their incomes will be dissipated. Cu Mu and Wang Xi agree that the people have not mulcited not of 3/10 but of 7/10 of their income. While this is hardly to be extracted from the text, Ho Shi has a characteristic tag, the people being regarded as an essential part of the state, and food as the people's heaven. It is not the right of that those in authority should value and be careful of both. While government expenses for broken chariots, worn-out horses, breastplates, helmets, bows and arrows, spears and shields, protective mantlets, I thought I said manlets, draught oxen and heavy wagons will amount to 4/10 of the total revenue. Hence, a wise general makes a point of foraging on the enemy. 1 cartload of the enemy's provisions is equivalent to 21 of our own, and likewise a single picule of his provender is equivalent to 20 of one's own store, because 20 cartloads will be consumed in the process of transporting 1 cartload to the front. A picule is a measurement equal to 133.3 pounds or 65.5 kilograms. Now, in order to kill the enemy, our men must be roused to anger. That there may be advantage from defeating the enemy, they must have their rewards. Cu Mu says rewards are necessary in order to make the soldiers see the advantage of beating the enemy. Thus, when you capture spoils from their enemy, they must be used as rewards so that your men have a keen desire to fight, each his own account. Therefore, in chariot fighting, when 10 or more chariots have been taken, those should be rewarded who took the first. Our own flag should be substituted for those of the enemy, and their chariots mingled and used in conjunction with ours. A captured soldier should be treated kindly, or should be kindly treated and kept. That is called using the conquered foe to augment one's own strength. In war, then, let your great object be victory and not lengthy campaigns. As Hoshi remarks, war is not a thing to be trifled with. Sun Tzu here reiterates the main lesson with this chapter is intended to enforce. Thus, it may be known that the leader of armies is the arbiter of people's fate, the man on whom it depends whether the nation shall be in peace or in peril. What did you learn from this chapter, Sunmi?
Be a good general.
Okay, I'm doing one. What was this? What was it mostly talking about?
Be a good Roman.
No? Are you paying attention?
No.
Well, you should listen harder, Sunmi. It was mostly about logistics and supplies and how to keep your army, basically just like strike fast. That was the first half. It was talking about striking fast and hitting fast. Even if you make mistakes, being fast in of itself is a huge advantage, right? And the second part is take as much stuff as you can from your enemy, because using your own supplies, it costs your people money and stuff, which is not good. And it costs a lot more to actually bring the food from the peasantry to your army people versus just taking it from the enemy.
Like fast, eat ass.
And also taking your enemy and turning them into your own by capturing them and treating them nice and using them as your own soldiers. And taking their stuff.
Fast, eat ass.
Sure. Please listen, Sunmi. I'm spending a lot of effort to read, so please listen. Okay?
Listen.
Okay, good. Well, try your best. Chapter 3, Attack by Stratagem. Sun Tzu said, in the practical art of war, the best thing of all is to take the enemy's country whole and intact. To shatter and destroy it is not so good. So too, it is better to capture an army entire rather than destroy it, to capture a regiment or detachment or a company entire than to destroy them. The equivalent to an army corps, according to Sima Fa, consists nominally of 12,500 men. According to Cao Kung, the equivalent of a regiment contained 500 men. The equivalent to a detachment consists of any number between 100 to 500. And the equivalent to a company contains from 5 to 100 men. The last two, Cheng Yu, gives exact figures of 100 and 5 respectively. Hence, to fight and conquer in all your battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Here again, no modern strategist will approve of the words of the old Chinese general. Moltke's greatest triumph, the capitulation of a huge French army at Sedan, was won practically without bloodshed. Thus, the highest form of generalship is to balk the enemy's plans. Perhaps the word balk falls short of the full force of the Chinese word, which implies not an attitude of defense, whereby one might be content to foil the enemy's stratagems one after another, but an active policy of counterattack. Hoshi puts this very clearly in his note. When the enemy has made a plan to attack against us, we must anticipate him by delivering our own attack first. Basically, this is really important to me. You always attack first. If you attack, you're winning. You never want to defend. You always want to attack because you control the engagement. You control what's happening by being the aggressor, Sunmi. You know that? The next best is to prevent. This also ties into what they were talking about before about hitting them when they're weak. If you're defending, you don't get to engage in one point and defeat in detail, right? You don't get to hit them where they're weak because you have to defend and protect things. It locks you in place. It makes you predictable, right? People can see what you're doing and choose the best plan on how to attack you because you don't have the initiative as a defender, so you don't get to choose any of that, right? So there's an inherent disadvantage in that sense. But you have advantages practically, like you have machine guns or artillery or landmines or whatever, but like the principle behind it is that. That's why, like, in any game, like video games, RTS especially, you're attacking, you're winning. That's a very simple and very important thing to understand. Because you control the engagement, and you can put yourself in the best situation to win. And if you don't, you just don't attack. And you do something else. The next best is to prevent the injunction of enemy forces, isolating him from his allies. We must not forget Sun Tzu, and speaking of hostilities, always has in mind the numerous states or principalities into which China of his day was split up. The next, in order to attack the enemy's army in the field when he's already at full strength. And the worst policy of all is to besiege walled cities. The rule is not to besiege walled cities if it can possibly be avoided. So basically you can take this as taking a losing fight. That's what it means, because walled cities is very good advantage for the enemy. You have to put in a lot of effort. You're fighting an uphill battle, basically saying don't do it. So it's not just walled cities, just anything we're at a disadvantage, don't do it, because it's bad. The rule is not to besiege walled cities. Another sound piece of military theory. Had the Boers acted upon it in 1899 and refrained from dissipating their strength before Kimberley, Mafeking, or even Ladysmith, it is much more probable that they would have been the masters of the situation before the British were ready seriously to oppose them. In preparation of mantlets, movable shelters, and various implements of war, we will take up to 3 whole months. It is not clear what Chinese word says, here translated as mantlets, described. Cao Kung simply defined them as large shields, but we get a better idea of them from Li Chuan, who says they were meant to protect the heads of those assaulting the city walls at close quarters. It seems to suggest some sort of Roman tetsudo readily made. Tsumu says they are wheeled vehicles used in repelling attacks, but this is denied by Chan Hao, see Supra 2. 14. The name is also applied to turrets on the city walls. Of the movable shelters, we get a fairly clear blah blah blah. Basically, they're just explaining what the freaking mantlet is. And the piling up of mounds over against the city walls will take 3 months more. There were great mounds or ramparts of earth heaped up the level of the enemy's walls in order to discover the weak points in the defense, and also destroy fortified turrets mentioned in the preceding note. The general, unable to control his irritation, will launch his men to the assault like swarming ants, with the result that 1/3 of his men are slain, while the town remains untaken. Such are the disastrous effects of a siege. I'm just skipping over some of these comments because they're stupid. Therefore, a skillful leader subdues the enemy troops without fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field. With his forces intact, he will dispute the mastery of the empire, and such without losing a man, his triumph will be complete. This is the method of attacking by stratagem. It is the rule of war that our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1 to surround him, if 5 to 1 to attack him, if twice as numerous to divide our army in 2. If equally matched, we can offer battle. If slightly inferior numbers, we seek to avoid the enemy. If quite unequal in every way, we can flee from him. Do you understand that? Something you basically attack when you have a huge advantage, right? And if you don't, you run, right? So again, with the same principle from before, hit them where they're weak and hit them when you're strong, right? And if you're not strong, don't hit them at all, right? Hence, through an obstinate fight may be made by a small force, in the end it must be captured by the larger force. Now the general is the bulwark of the state. If the bulwark is complete at all points, the state will be strong. If the bulwark is defective, the state will be weak. There are 3 ways in which a ruler can bring misfortune upon his army. 1. By commanding the army to retreat, to advance or to retreat, being ignorant of the fact they cannot obey. This is called hobbling an army. One more thing without the ruler, blah, 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 blah. A kingdom should not be governed from without, and an army should not be directed from within. Of course, it is true that during an engagement or when in close touch with the enemy, the general should not be in the thick of his own troops, but a little distance apart. Otherwise, he will be liable to misjudge the position as a whole and give wrong orders. 2. By attempting to govern an army in the same way he administers a kingdom, being ignorant of the conditions which obtain in an army, this causes restlessness in the soldiers' minds. As Cao Kung's note is freely translated, the military sphere and the civil sphere are wholly distinct. You cannot handle an army in kid's gloves. And Cheng Yu says, humanity and justice are the principles in which to govern a state, but not an army. Opportunism and flexibility, on the other hand, are the military rather than civil virtues, to assimilating the government of an army, that is, to that of a state understood. 3. By employing the officers of his army without discrimination. That is, he is not careful to use the right man in the right place. Through ignorance of military principle, of adaptation to circumstances, this shakes the confidence of the soldiers. Basically saying, don't let rulers rule your army because they don't know how to rule an army. Basically.
Give him a kiss.
Because, think about which is the famous world leader that is known for messing with their army and losing a war because of it, because he's really stupid and doesn't know how to lead an army.
The guy from Dictator.
The guy from Dictator. It's a real person, a very famous real person, son. Me think about it.
Make it pointy. Probably said one of those things.
What?
Probably said one of those things.
What?
Probably said make it pointy.
No, it's not a Muslim.
But he probably said
He's a very famous in one of the largest wars in the world. Some kind of war of the worlds? Oh my god, no. Very famous for giving his generals orders that made no sense.
Hitler?
Yes. Hitler, Adolf, that man.
So having those camps was a good idea?
What do you mean camps?
Camps?
Camps don't have anything to do with the military. It's mostly about his engagements in Russia, like Stalingrad and like Leningrad instead of rushing to Moscow. I mean, he did have some valid concerns, honestly, getting the oil fields in the south. Leningrad, I guess you had to secure your northern flank, but not storming from Moscow just for the at least for the symbolic thing, and like that's ahead of their government. They had to move all their production east of the Urals, right? But they, as far as I know, in World War II, I'm pretty sure they still, like, the government and central command was still in Moscow. They were literally 100 miles away from Moscow. You know that's on me? You know that?
I don't know.
They could have taken Moscow. Probably. Maybe not, actually. Who knows? Where was I? But when the army is restless and distrustful, trouble is sure to come from other feudal princes. That is simply bringing anarchy into the army and flinging victory away. Also, I remember when the Russians started beating the Germans back, a lot of times Hitler did not allow for retreats or anything. Also, famously during D-Day, who was in charge? Rommel was in charge, I think, and he wasn't allowed to do anything with his panzer divisions. He had like a reactionary force of panzer divisions he wanted to send to go support the beachheads before the Allies got a foothold. Hitler was sleeping, so he wasn't allowed to send them to go push the Allies back into the ocean, right? Thus we may know that there are 5 essentials for victory. 1. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. That's important, Sunmi. 2. He will win who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces. 3. He will win whose army is animated by the same spirit throughout its ranks. 4. He will win who, prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared. 5. He will win who has the military capacity is not interfered by the sovereign. Tuyu quotes Wang Zu saying, "It is a sovereign's function to give broad instructions, but to decide on battle is a function of the general. It is needless to dilate on the military disasters which have been caused by undue interference with operations in the field on the part of the home government. Napoleon undoubtedly owed much of his extraordinary success to the fact that he was not hampered by central authority," because he was a central authority, and he was brilliant. Victory lies in the knowledge of these 5 points. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and know... This is the other really famous one. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Cheng Yu says, knowing the enemy enables you to take the offensive. Knowing yourself enables you to stand on the defensive. He adds, attack is a secret of defense. Defense is the planning of an attack. It would be hard to find a better epitome of the root principle of war. Do you understand, Sunmi?
Give him a kiss.
Not give him a kiss. Do you understand? That's like a yin and yang thing, too. Kind of. You know, like how like there's a little black dot in the white area and the white dot in the black area. How like when you're attacking, you should be okay. Whatever. Qin Empire, Yangtze. They're throwing whips into the stream. What the fuck? Oh yeah, this is another fun story. Li Chuan cites a case of Fu Qin, the Prince of Qin, who in 383 AD marched with a vast army against the Qin Emperor. When warned not to despise an enemy who could command the services of such men such as He San and Huang Chang Chuang, he boastfully replied, I have the population of 8 provinces at my back. Infantry and horsemen, the number of 1 million. Why? They could dam the Yangtze River itself by merely throwing their whips into the stream. What danger I have to fear? Nevertheless, his forces were soon after disastrously routed at the Fei River. He was obligated to beat a hasty retreat. Kathy, you want me to read the Washishanga and Washishanga? Huh? Do your best Chinese voice on me. Hey, Hero, welcome, Shiwak. No, not the hero, not the hero kind, but like Washishanga, like oh, song. Do you think Mom read The Art of War because she's Chinese? Do you think that's like ingrained in your blood or something? Do you think Mom do you think if like someone took me and dumped me in the rice field, do you think like since my rice blood will like activate, like rice mode activated, and I could start rice picking like a master rice picker? Shit. I was about to say something really racist about black people. Is that any different making like a Chinese rice picking joke and like a black people cotton picking joke? You think those are on the same level or no? What do you think?
Well, one was voluntary and the other was semi-voluntary.
I'm pretty sure there's a lot of serfs in China which don't want to be picking rice.
Yeah, so voluntary.
Why is not voluntary?
Oh, I ran away.
Alright, Chapter 4, Tactical Dispositions. Sun Tzu said the good fighters of old put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat and wait for an opportunity of defeating the enemy. Remember I told you this on me? Remember that? Remember I told you this on me? 2. To secure ourselves against defeat lies within our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. That is, of course, by a mistake on the enemy's part. Thus, a good fighter is able to secure himself against defeat. Cheng Yu says that this is done by concealing the disposition of his troops, covering up his tracks, and not taking unremitting precautions, but he cannot make certain of defeating the enemy. Hence the saying, one may know how to conquer without being able to do it. Security against defeat implies defensive tactics. Ability to defeat the enemy means taking the offense. The meaning they give is he who cannot conquer takes the defense is plausible enough. Standing on the defensive indicates insufficient strength, attacking a superabundance of strength. The general who is skilled in defense hides in the most secret recesses of the earth. He who is skilled in attack flashes forth from the topmost heights of heaven. Literally hides underneath ninth earth, which is a metaphor indicating the utmost secrecy and concealment, so that the enemy may not know his whereabouts. Another metaphor implying that he falls upon his adversary like a thunderbolt against which there is no time to prepare. That is the opinion of most of the commentators. Thus, on the one hand, we have the ability to protect ourselves, on the other, that a victory that is complete. To see victory only when it is within the ken of the common herd is not the acme of excellence. As Sao Kung remarks, the thing is to see the plant before it has germinated, to foresee the event before the action has begun. Li Chuan alludes to the story of Han Xin, who, when about to attack a vastly superior army of Chao, who was strongly entrenched in the city of Chengwan, says to his officers, Gentlemen, we are able to annihilate the enemy, and we shall meet again at dinner. The officers hardly took his word seriously, and gave a very dubious assent, but Han Xin had already worked out in his mind the details of a clever stratagem whereby, as he foresaw, he was able to capture the city and inflict a crushing defeat on his adversary. Neither is the acme of excellence if you fight and conquer, as the whole empire says, well done. True excellence being, as Sumu says it, to plan secretly, to move surreptitiously, to foil the enemy's intentions, to balk in his schemes, so that the last day may be won without shedding a drop of blood. Sun Tzu reserves his approbation for things the world's coarse thumb and a finger failed to plumb. To lift an autumn hair is no sign of great strength. Autumn hair is explained as the fur of a hare which is finest in autumn, which it begins to grow afresh. The phase is very common one in Chinese writer. To see the sun and moon is no sign of sharp sight. To hear the noise of thunder is no sign of a quick ear. What does that mean, Sunmi? To lift an autumn hair is no sign of great strength. To see the sun and moon is no sign of sharp sight. To hear the noise of thunder is no sign of quick ear. What does that mean?
Don't take things for granted.
No?
Don't overestimate yourself?
No? Oh my god. To lift an autumn hair is no sign of great strength. Autumn hair is very weak fur of a rabbit. To see the sun and moon is no sign of sharp sight. To hear the noise of thunder is no sign of quick ear.
Those are things that you could take for granted.
No. It means if you do something easy, it doesn't mean you're really good at it. If you rip up something that's super easy to rip up, you're not strong. If you see something that's super bright and obvious, like the sun and moon, if you can see that, you're not a super vision. If you hear the noise of thunder, which is really fucking loud, if you can hear that, you don't have super hearing. It's not that you don't have super hearing. It doesn't mean, it means that you probably, or that's not a sign that you have good hearing. Like something like hearing someone whisper across the room, right? That's hard to do, right? If you can do that, that means you have good hearing. If you hear an explosion, that doesn't mean you have good hearing. That doesn't necessarily mean you have good hearing. You understand? That's very straightforward. I'm surprised you didn't understand that. When the ancients called a clever fighter is one who not only wins, but excels in winning with ease. The last half is literally one who conquering excels in easy conquering. Mei Yao Chen says, he who only sees the obvious wins his battle with difficulty. He who looks below the surface wins with ease. Basically, it means that it's not good enough just to win. You have to win cleanly, because that means you are doing it right. Hence his victories bring him neither reputation for wisdom nor credit for courage. Tsumu explains this very well, insomuch that his victories are gained over circumstances that have not come to light. The world at large knows nothing of them. He wins no reputation for his wisdom, insomuch as a hostile state submits before he has been any bloodshed. He receives no credit for courage. He wins his battles by making no mistakes. He plans no superfluous marches. He devises no futile attacks. The connection of ideas is explained by Cheng Yu, one who seeks to conquer by sheer strength. Clever though he may be at winning pitched battles, is also liable on occasion to be vanquished. Whereas he who can look into the future and discern conditions that are not yet manifest will never make a blunder and therefore invariably win. Making no mistakes is what establishes the certainty of victory, for it means conquering an enemy that is already defeated. Hence, the skillful fighter puts himself into a position which he makes defeat impossible, and does not miss the moment for defeating the enemy. A consul of perfection, as Tsumu truly observed, position need not be confined to the actual ground occupied by his troops. It includes all the arrangements and preparations for which a wise general will make to increase the safety of his army. Thus it is that in war, the victorious strategist only seeks battle after victory has been won, whereby he is destined to defeat his first fights and afterward looks for victory. Whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights and afterwards looks for victory. What does that mean, Sunmi? Thus it is in war, a victorious strategist only seeks battle after victory has been won, whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights... What? Yeah, what does that mean? Exactly. Yeah, you win by putting yourself in the best position possible and then you fight. If you fight first and then try to win, you will never win, right? Hoshi expounds on this paradox. In warfare, first lay plans which will ensure victory, then lead your army to battle. If you will not begin with a stratagem but rely on brute strength alone, victory will no longer be assured. The consummate leader cultivates moral law and strictly adheres to method and discipline, thus it is in his power to control success. In respect to military method, firstly, measurement, secondly, estimation of quantity, thirdly, calculation, fourthly, balancing of chances, fifthly, victory. Measurement owes existence to the earth. Estimation of quantity of measurement. Circulation to estimation of quantity. Balancing of chances to calculation. And victory to balancing of chances. It is not easy to distinguish the four terms very clearly in Chinese. The first seems to be surveying the measurement of the ground, which enable us to form an estimate of the enemy's strength, and to make calculations based on the data thus obtained. We are thus led to a general weighing up or comparison of the enemy's chances with his own. If the latter turn to scale, then victory ensues. The chief difficulty lies in the third term, which in Chinese some commentators take as a calculation of numbers, thereby making it nearly synonymous with the second term. Perhaps by the second term be thought as a consideration of the enemy's general position or condition, while the third is an estimate of numerical strength. On the other hand, Sumu says the question of relative strength having been settled, we can bring varied resources of cunning into play. Hoshi seconds this interpretation but weakens it. However, it points to the third term as being a calculation of numbers. A victorious army opposed to a routed one is as a pound weight placed on the scale against a single grain. The onrush of a conquering force is like the bursting of a pent-up waters into a chasm 1,000 fathoms deep. So much for tactical dispositions. Chapter 5. Energy. Sun Tzu says, to control a large force is the same principle to control that of a few men. It is merely a question of dividing up their numbers. That is, cutting up the army into regiments, companies, etc., with subordinate officers in command of each. Su Mu reminds us of Han Xin's famous reply to the first Han Emperor, who once said to him, "How large of an army do you think I could lead?" "Not more than 100,000 men, your majesty." "And you?" asked the emperor. "Oh," he answered, "the more the better." Fighting with a large army under your command is nowise different from fighting with a small one. It is merely a question of instituting signs and signals. To ensure that your whole host may bear the brunt of an enemy's attack and remain unshaken, it is effective by maneuvers, direct and indirect. We now come to one of the most interesting parts of Sun Tzu's treatise, the discussion of Cheng and Qi. It is by no means easy to grasp the full significance of these two terms, or to render them consistently by good English equivalents. It may be as well to tabulate some of these commentators' remarks on the subject before proceeding further. Li Chuan says facing the enemy is Cheng, and making lateral diversion is Qi. Xia Lin says, in presence of the enemy, your troops should be arrayed in a normal fashion, but in order to secure victory, abnormal maneuvers must be employed. Mei Yao Chen says, Qi is active, Cheng is passive. Passivity means waiting for an opportunity. Activity brings the victory onto itself. Ho Shi says, we must cause the enemy to regard our straightforward attack as one that is secretly designed, and vice versa. Thus, Cheng may also be Qi, but Qi must also be Cheng. He instances the famous exploit of Han Xin, who, when marching ostensibly against Lin Qin, now Chao Yi Shinsei, suddenly threw a large force across the Yellow River in wooden tubs, utterly disconcerting his opponent. Qian Han Shu, Chapter 3. Here, we are told the march on Lin Chen was Cheng, and his surprise maneuver was Qi. Cheng Yu gives the following summary of his words. Military writers do not agree with the meaning of Qi and Cheng. While Lao Tzu says, 4th century BC, says direct warfare favors frontal attacks, indirect warfare attacks from the rear. Cao Kung says going straight out to join battle is a direct operation. Appearing at the enemy's rear is an indirect maneuver. Li Wenkung, 6th and 7th century AD, in war, to march straight ahead is Cheng, turning movements on the other hand are Qi. These writers simply regard Cheng as Cheng and Qi as Qi. They do not. The two are mutually interchangeable and run into each other like two sides of a circle. The comment of the Sung Emperor Sai Sung goes to the root of the matter. A Qi maneuver may be Cheng if we make the enemy look upon it as Chung, and our real attack will be Qi and vice versa. The whole secret lies in confusing the enemy so he cannot fathom our real intent. To put it perhaps a little more clearly, any attack or operation is Chung, on the other hand, his attention fixed, whereas Qi, which takes him by surprise or from an unexpected quarter. If an enemy pursues movement that is meant to be Qi, immediately it becomes Chung. You understand what that means, Sunmi?
A fellow.
What the fuck does Qi and Chung mean, Sunmi?
Nobody can agree.
No, they do agree. Basically, it means Chung is a frontal-facing assault that the enemy reacts to. Qi is when you maneuver and take the enemy by surprise. However, the maneuver that takes the enemy by surprise, the enemy anticipates it, and thereby directs their defense towards it. It becomes Chung. It becomes a direct action. Ching Chung. It's actually Chi, but I just read it as Chi because I'm lazy. Yeah? I mean, it's fairly basic. Like, it's a lot to think about. I like it. It's a very good and concise reading. It's not confusing. It's pretty straightforward, and it tells you stuff that's... A lot of stuff's not directly useful, but a lot of stuff is. You just have to frame your thinking differently. Like, the part where he talks about fire is not very useful. Like, are you going to use a fire bucket on people anytime soon? But it's the principle behind it. You have to think, like, beyond what it literally means. And it's pretty obvious, honestly. Yeah, you should light people on fire. That's a pretty direct meaning, I guess. Go and light people on fire, Sunmi. When you get arrested, say, Sun Tzu told me to light people on fire. So he told me it was a good idea. That the impact of your army be like a grindstone dashed upon an egg. This is affected by the science of weak points and strong. In all fighting, the direct method may be used for joining battle, but indirect methods may be needed to secure victory. Chang Yu says, steadily develop indirect tactics either by pounding the enemy's flanks or falling on his rear. And brilliant example of indirect tactics which decided the fortunes of a campaign was Lord Roberts' Night's March during the Peshawar Kotal in the Second Afghan War. Indirect attacks efficiently applied are inexhaustible as heaven and earth, unending as a flow of rivers and streams like the sun and moon. They end but begin anew, like the four seasons they pass away but to return once more. Okay, Catherine, what's a very famous war that used a lot of indirect attacks?
Cold War.
It's a major war America fought in. No. Cold War wasn't a war, like a fighting war. It's in the name. What? Iran?
What? Sand.
Sand? It's not sand. No. No. We're not the ones doing the indirect attacks. The other guys are. What?
Pigs.
I suppose you can say sand people, kind of, like the... like suicide bombers, but like... No, I'm talking like traditional war stuff, not terrorism war, but like it's the same principle. No. It's a real war, a big one of the two big ones. Yeah, Vietnam. You remember Ho Chi Minh Trail? We didn't have there was no like battle line. They hit everywhere, right? There were no lines of battle. What?
We just use airplane and just drop stuff on
because there were no... I just told you, there's no battle lines, right? They didn't fight along the border the entire time. Most of the time, they just went in across the entire, like, western border of Vietnam, which is fucking huge. They have like secret, like, ghost calls, right? And then just freaking NVAs just pop out of the bushes on me. You know when they say, like Tommy makes a joke of the trees are talking, why are the trees talking, right? That was literally Vietnam.
You made a joke of that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Tommy makes jokes like that. Chang Yu says, steadily develop... Oh, I read that. Indirect tactics efficiently applied are... Oh, no, I read that too. Chung ching ching chong ding dong. There are no more than 5 musical notes, yet the combinations of those 5 give rise to more melodies than can ever be heard. There are not more than 5 primary colors, blue, yellow, red, white, and black. Yet, in combination, they produce more hues than can ever be seen. There are not more 5 cardinal tastes, sour, acrid, salt, sweet, and bitter. Yet, combinations of them yield more flavors than can ever be tasted. In battle, there are not more than 2 methods of attack, the direct and indirect. Yet, those 2 in combinations give rise to an endless series of maneuvers. The direct and indirect lead onto each other in turn. It is like moving in a circle. You never come to an end. Who can exhaust the possibilities of their combination? The onset of troops is like the rush of a torrent who will even roll stones along its course. The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. The Chinese here is tricky, and the certain key word in the context it is used defines the best efforts of the translator. Tumu defines this word as the measurement of estimation of distance, but this meaning does not quite fit the illustrative simile in 15. Applying the definition of the falcon, seems to denote the instinct of self-restraint, which keeps a bird from swooping on its quarry until the right moment. Together with the process of judging when the right moment has arrived, the analogous quality in soldiers is the highly important one of being able to resolve their fire until the very instant in which it will be the most effective. When the Victory went into action at Trafalgar, at hardly more than a drifting pace, she was for several minutes exposed to a storm of shot and shell before replying with a single gun. Nelson coolly waited until he was within close range, which the broadside he brought to bear worked fearful havoc on the enemy's nearest ships. So what does that remind you of, Sunmi? Cowboys? It's not cowboys. Are you even listening?
Yeah, don't recklessly shoot, just... Like,
yeah, okay. Okay, but what's the biggest thing that reminds you of Sunmi? Yeah, line infantry and musket lines. You know what they say, you have to keep on marching, even they shoot at you, keep on marching and get closer to get a better shot, right? Therefore, yeah. It is a good idea. Because your musket's only accurate to like 50 yards, and it's not accurate, like it only goes out 50 yards and kills at 50 yards or something. Alright, you know what, let's look it up. I think the biggest one, why line infantry, it comes from cavalry, because if you're spread out, cavalry can easily run you down and murder you, but if you're in a big-ass line, cavalry can't really do much to you. Because, you know, your guns are still pokey sticks, so you still have spears. You just have spears that can shoot, basically. Right? And if you're not in formation, the cavalry just eat you up. I assume that's the reason. Line infantry used. Also kept morale up, so you have your men marching next to you, so you wouldn't run, right? If you're in like a skirmishing formation and you weren't disciplined enough, you might run. Oh, it's sacrifice defense against cavalry, really? Yeah, no, but like it keeps you like it keeps morale up. Like you're with the boys. You're not just marching on your own to war. You're like, you know, you're part of something. Apparently it's weaker against cavalry. I guess a square would be a lot better versus cavalry. Huh. Okay, I was entirely wrong. In addition, line formation was extremely vulnerable to cavalry's charge. Oh yeah, from flanks and rear. That makes sense. Those attacks usually result in complete breakdown, cohesion, and even destruction of the unit unless they are able to form a square. During Napoleonic Wars, British famously adopted two-rank line formation. This was adopted to compensate for the lack of numbers and maximize their fire frontage. British continued to use a two-rank line until the late 19th century. Famous thin red line of 93rd Highland Regiment. You know what song it is? It's British Grenadiers. Also, you can't I think a big one's also you can't communicate because there's no radios, right? So it's easier to communicate in like bunches, like lines, because you had your officers able to tell your men to do something. Right, that's a big one. Also, volley fire was good because everyone fired at once and then the smoke could clear so you can still see the enemy's location and range. and also slowed down the soldiers who would panic and fire and miss too, because they became like ordered and were more accurate because they weren't like scared on their own. Also increased psychological damage to the enemy as large number of troops bowled over in a huge volley is more shocking than a continuous trickle. So having 100 men fall over dead as you shoot is a lot scarier, I guess, and they'll break if they're not as disciplined. Can you imagine fighting an alliance on me? How would you feel if you were like an American militiamen fighting against like the Redcoats and like you shot at them and they just kept on walking at you? How would you feel? Would you like pee yourself and run? I think that's pretty much how the British won a lot, I think. Against the militia mostly, because militia obviously, you know, you're not a professional soldier. You don't want to get shot all the time. What?
Wait, no, that wasn't Braveheart. That was the Patriot.
The Patriot, yeah.
I remember that.
They broke, and then the cavalry runs them down, and then that guy with the sword, you know, the bad guy.
Yeah, but at the beginning, like they were like, oh, a lot of the Americans were running.
Yeah. Well, because they were militia, they weren't professional. Because America, we had the army, like the regular army, which are professionals. Yeah.
Like,
where was I?
I really didn't like that movie. I think
you didn't like it? I thought it was great. You didn't like Mel Gibson?
I think he's so fucking ugly.
He's not ugly. Come on. What about Scotland Forever? Mel Gibson, Patriot. He has a huge beard now. He does not look ugly. What are you talking about? He looks like a guy from like the freaking 80s, okay?
He looks like he should have lamb chops.
No. In the Patriot? No.
Just like in general, I think he's
in general, right now he has a huge beard right now.
Still alive.
Eh. Like, what would you rate him as?
3 out of 5. 3 out of 10.
It's out of 10. You give him a 3?
It's ugly.
Really? Right, what do you rank Rob Lowe as?
Rob Lowe?
You know Rob Lowe, the guy from The West Wing? The guy from Ponyboy movie? Rob Lowe?
I think a 10 out of 10.
I think Rob is like a easy 9 to 10 out of 10. Easy. One of the hottest men in movies and TV. By a lot.
7.
A 7? Okay, whatever.
10 is, Blade Runner.
What about Christian Bale?
Oh, he's like 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10? I think Rob Lowe's higher than Christian Bale by a little bit.
Christian Bale gets 1 point deducted because he's British.
I don't think he's British. I think he's like... Is he British?
Matt Nicholson, whatever.
Is Christian Bale British? I know he's European, but is he British? Oh, he is. From Haverfordwest, United Kingdom. Therefore, a good fighter will be terrible on his onset and prompt in his decision. The word decision may be a reference to blah blah blah. Basically, attack fast. Energy important. Do it. Energy may be likened to the bending of a crossbow. Decision to the releasing of a trigger. Amidst the turmoil and tumult of battle, there may be seeming disorder, yet no real disorder at all. Amid confusion and chaos, your array may be without head or tail, yet it will be proof against defeat. Simulated disorder postulates perfect discipline. Simulated fear postulates courage. Simulated weakness postulates strength. Hiding order beneath the cloak of disorder is simply a question of subdivision. Concealing courage underneath a show of timidity presupposes a fund of latent energy. Masking strength with weakness is to be affected by tactical dispositions. You know, what does that mean, Sunmi?
you want to hide something, do it with reason.
Kind of. It's basically in order to fake out your opponent by making you think you're disordered. In order to do that, you require the opposite. You must be perfectly disciplined in order to simulate disorder to throw off your enemy. In order to pretend that you're scared, you must be perfectly courageous, right? In order to show weakness, you must be entirely strong to do so, right? Thus, one who is skillful at keeping the enemy on the move maintains a deceitful appearance, according to which the enemy will act. So this is basically how you control what the enemy does by showing them what you want them to see, right?
Just trample the Indians to death.
Really?
No.
I thought there were no elephants in America.
No, like Indians.
Yeah, I know. I was just making a joke.
There is elephants. They're really bad idea. I think they also had a fucking giraffe. They had a giraffe.
Cool. I mean, what would you ride into battle? Bear? Tiger? Giraffe? Koala? Tapir? Stingray? Whale? Dolphin? Chicken? Chicken?
Yeah, you can behead it. I'll still keep it moving.
Chicken?
Chicken.
Bird? Your bird? Will you ride your bird into battle?
Into battle?
Why not?
Oh. You dare suggest I put my boy into danger?
Thus, one who is skillful at keeping the enemy on the move maintains deceitful appearances, according to which the enemy will act. Blah, 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 and whatever. He sacrifices something so that the enemy may snatch at it. By holding out baits, he keeps him on the march. Then with a body of picked men, he lies in wait for him.
Holy shit, picked men?
Picked men. So he picks his best men. With an emendation, or amending, I guess, suggested by Li Qing, he then reads, he lies in wait with the main body of his troops. The clever combatant looks to the effect of combined energy and does not require too much from individuals. Tumu says he first considers the power of his army in bulk. Afterwards, he takes the individual talent into account and uses each man according to his capabilities. He does not demand perfection from the untalented. Hence his ability to pick out the right men and utilize combined energy. When he utilizes combined energy, his fighting men become, as it were, like rolling logs onto stones. For as the nature of a log or stone is to remain motionless on level ground and to move when on a slope, if four-cornered, to come to a standstill, if round-shaped, to go rolling down. Cao Kung calls this the use of natural or inherent power. Thus, the energy developed by good fighting men is as the momentum of a round stone rolled down the mountain, thousands of feet in height. So much to the subject of energy. The chief lesson in this chapter, in Tumu's opinion, is of paramount importance in war. The rapid evolutions and sudden rushes, great results, he adds, can thus be achieved with small forces. 41 Years in India, Chapter 46. Chapter 6, Weak Points and Strong. Cheng Yu attempts to explain the sequence of chapters as follows. Chapter 4, on tactical dispositions, treated the offensive and defensive. Chapter 5, Energy, dealt with direct and indirect methods. The good general acquaints himself first with the theory of attack and defense, then turns his attention to direct and indirect methods. He studies the art of varying and combining these two methods before proceeding to the subject of weak and strong points. For the use of direct and indirect methods arises out of the attack and defense, the perception of weak and strong points depends again on the above methods. Hence the present chapter comes immediately after the chapter on energy. Sun Tzu says, whoever is first on the field and awaits the coming of an enemy will be fresh for the fight. Whoever is second in the field has to hasten to battle or will arrive exhausted. Therefore, the clever combatant imposes his will on the enemy and does not allow the enemy's will to be imposed on him. One mark of a great soldier is to fight on his own terms or to fight not at all. That's important. You understand that, Sun Mi? By holding out advantages to him, he can cause the enemy to approach on his own accord, or by inflicting damage, he can make it impossible for the enemy to draw near. In the first case, he will entice him with bait. In the second, he will strike at some important point which the enemy will have to defend. If the enemy is taking his ease, he can harass him. This passage may be cited, blah, blah, blah. If supplied well with food, he can starve him out. If quietly in camp, he can force him to move. Appear at points which the enemy must hasten to defend. March swiftly to the places you are not expected. An army may march great distances without distress if it marches through country where the enemy is not. Cao Kun sums this up very well. Emerge from the void like a bolt from the blue. Strike at vulnerable points. Shun places that are defended. Attack in unexpected quarters. You can be sure of it succeeding in your attacks if you only attack places which are undefended. Wang Xi explains undefended places as weak points, that is to say, where a general is lacking in capacity or soldiers in spirit, where the walls are not strong enough, the precautions are not strict enough, where relief comes too late, provisions are too scanty, or defenders are variants amongst themselves. You can ensure the safety of your defense if you only hold positions that cannot be attacked. In order to make your defense quite safe, you must defend even those places that are not likely to be attacked. How much more than those that will be attacked? Taken thus, the clause blah, 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 blah. Hence, this general is skillful in attack, whose opponents do not know what to defend. He is skillful in defense when opponents do not know what to attack. An aphorism which puts the whole art of war in a nutshell. O divine art, a subtlety and secrecy, though you will learn to be invisible, though through you inaudible, literally without form or sound. That is, of course, with reference to the enemy, and hence we can hold the enemy's fate in our hands. You may advance and be absolutely irresistible, for the enemy's weak points you may retire and be safe from pursuit, if your movements are more rapid than those of the enemy. If you wish to fight, the enemy will be forced into engagement, even though he be sheltered behind a high rampart and a deep ditch. All we need to do is attack some other place that he will be obligated to relieve. Tu Mu says, if the enemy is in the invading party, we can cut this line of communication and occupy the roads by which he will have to return. If we are the invaders, we may direct our attack against the sovereign himself. It is clear that Sun Tzu, unlike certain generals in the later Boer War, was no believer in frontal attacks. If we do not wish to fight, we can prevent the enemy from engaging us through the lens of our encampment, to be merely traced out on the ground. All we need to do is throw something odd and unaccountable in his way. Let me get more water.
Me.
Oh. If we wish to fight, the enemy can be forced to an engagement, even though he be sheltered behind a high rampart and a deep ditch. All we need to do is attack some other place he will be obligated to relieve. It's amazing, Sumi. It's amazing how much this stuff comes out in RTS and StarCraft and like other RTSs and stuff. Like where the enemy, like let's say your enemy's at his natural and he has a third open, you can send a small force to his third to pull him to his third, because otherwise he's gonna lose his third because probes can't fight, right? And then you hit his main army as he's out of position and moving. Like, let's say he's playing Terran, his siege tanks are unsieged because he wants to move him to his third, and then you hit him there. Or you hit his third and then you drop into his main, right, where P is in neither places, but he has to defend his third and he has to defend his main, so you pull him from his entrenched position. I literally see this like every time I watch StarCraft, literally every time. It's crazy, like how much you can apply this to like RTS. It's amazing. I love it. These are very simple concepts that like are regularly applied and are easy to understand. If you do not wish to fight, we can prevent the enemy from engaging us, even though our lines of encampment may be merely traced out on the ground. All we need to do is throw something odd and unaccountable in his way. By discovering the enemy's dispositions and remaining invisible ourselves, we can keep our forces concentrated while the enemies must be divided. The conclusion is perhaps not very obvious, but Cheng Yu, after Mei Yao Chen, rightly explains it as such. If the enemy's dispositions are visible, we can make for him in one body, whereas if our own dispositions are kept secret, the enemy will be obligated to divide his forces in order to guard against attack from every quarter. We can form a single united body by which the enemy must split into fractions. Hence, there will be a whole pitted against several parts of a whole, which means that we shall be many to the enemy's few. What does that mean, Sunmi? This is a very core concept, Sunmi. Remember if you outnumber them by 10 to 1, you surround them. If outnumber them 5 to 1, you fight them and crush them. Remember that? What does that mean, Sunmi?
What bitches get money?
It means defeat in detail. It means you separate their forces and you hit them with a concentrated force in one spot where you outnumber your enemy. Thus, if we are able to attack, and if we are able thus to attack an inferior force with a superior one, our opponents will be in dire straits. The spot where we intend to fight must not be made known, for then the enemy will have to prepare against a possible attack at several different points. Sheridan once again explained the reason of General Grant's victory, stating, while his opponents were kept fully employed wondering what he was going to do, he was thinking most of what he was going to do himself. And his forces being thus distributed in many directions, his numbers we shall have to face at any given point will be proportionally few. This is also why defending stuff, you defend everything, you defend nothing, because you separate your forces out where you will always lose, because your forces are too split up, right? But this is also in general why defending is bad. You don't have the impetus, you don't have the ability to choose the engagement. And you have to defend multiple things. Otherwise you'll just lose it for nothing. 4. Should the enemy strengthen his van, he will weaken his rear. Should he strengthen his rear, he will weaken his van. He means vanguard, so his front. Should he strengthen his left, he will weaken his right. Should he strengthen his right, he will weaken his left. If he sends reinforcements everywhere, he will everywhere be weak. In Frederick the Great's instructions to his generals, we read, a defensive war is apt to betray us into too frequent detachment. Those generals who have but little experience attempt to protect every point, while those who are better acquainted with their profession, having only the capital object in view, guard against a decisive blow and acquiesce in small misfortunes to avoid greater. Basically, don't defend everywhere in equal parts, because you'll lose everywhere. Numerical weakness comes from having to prepare against possible attacks. Numerical strength from compelling our adversary to make those preparations against us. The highest generalship in Colonel Henderson's words is to compel the enemy to disperse his army, then to concentrate superior force against a fraction in turn. This also reminds me when I used to play Wargame Red Dragon. Literally what everyone did, there's like 2 fronts or 3 fronts or whatever. They just split their army evenly. Like they just put medium tanks everywhere and like put a little bit of infantry everywhere, right? I taught people when I was teaching people how to play Wargame, and when I was playing Wargame, I had like a 80%, like 70 to 80% win rate in Wargame. Like literally, what you do, you put a skeleton crew just to like see the enemy and slow them down a little bit on one flank. So you put like, let's say you have 1,000 points to start, you put like 100, 200 points of stuff on one flank, and you put everything else on the other, and you attack on that front. What the enemy does, they just micro against the battle, but they only put like 500 points of armies against 800. And they put 500 points on the flank, but generally they don't attack on the flank. And if they do, I can reinforce if I need to. But, like, just concentrating your forces is the biggest and easiest thing you can do to win. Numerical weakness comes from having to prepare against possible attacks. Numerical strength from compelling our adversary to make these preparations against us. Knowing the place and time of the coming battle, we may concentrate from the greatest distances in order to fight. But if neither time nor place be known, then the left wing will be impotent to succor the right equally impotent to succor the left, the van unable to relieve the rear to support the van. How much more so if the furthest portions of the army are anything but under 100 li apart, and even nearest are separated by several li. Though, according to my estimate, the soldiers of the Yue exceed our own in number, that shall advantage them nothing in the matter of victory. I say then that victory can be achieved. Though the enemy may be stronger in numbers, we may prevent him from fighting. Scheme so as to discover his plans and the likelihood of their success. An alternative reading offered by Chi Lin. Know beforehand all plans conducive to our success and the enemy's failure. Rouse him and learn the principle of his activity or inactivity. Chang Yu tells us that by noting the joy or anger shown by the enemy on thus being disturbed, we shall be able to conclude whether his policy is to lie low or the reverse. He instances the actions of Chou Kulang, who sent the scornful present of a woman's head dress to Suma Yi in order to goad him out of his Fabian tactics. Basically, chop bitch head off, send him to your enemy, piss him off. You think that's a good idea, Sunmi? Send them a woman's head. Is it a headdress or a woman's head and headdress? I have no idea. Force him to reveal himself so as to find out his vulnerable spots. Carefully compare the opposing army with your own so that you may know where strength is superabundant and where it is deficient. In making tactical dispositions, the highest pitch you can attain is to conceal them. The piquancy of paradox evaporates in translation. Concealment perhaps is not so much actual invisibility as showing no sign of what you mean to do, of the plans that are formed in your brain. Conceal your dispositions and you will be safe from the prying eyes of the subtlest spies, from the machinations of the wisest brains. Tumu explains, through the enemy, although the enemy may have clever and capable officers, they will not be able to lay plans against us. How victory may be produced from them out of the enemy's own tactics, that is what multitude cannot comprehend. All men can see tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved. Everyone can see superficially how a battle is won, but they cannot see the long series of plans and combinations that has preceded the battle. Do not repeat the tactics which has gained you one victory, but let your methods be regulated by an infinite variety of circumstances. As Wang Xi sagely remarks, there is but one root principle underlying victory, but the tactics which lead up to it are infinite in number. Compare this to Colonel Henderson. The rules of strategy are few and simple. They may be learned in a week. They may be taught by familiar illustrations or a dozen diagrams, but knowing such knowledge will no more teach a man to lead an army like Napoleon than the knowledge of grammar can teach him to write like Gibbon. Military tactics are like unto water, for water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards. So, in war, the way to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak. Like water, taking the line of least resistance. Water shapes itself in course according to the nature of the ground in which it flows. The soldier works out his victory in relation to the foe to whom he is facing. Therefore, just as water retains no constant shape, so in warfare there are no constant conditions. He who can modify his tactics in relation to his opponent thereby succeeds in winning where may be called a heaven-born captain. The 5 elements, water, fire, wood, metal, and earth, are not all equally predominant. The 4 seasons make way for each other in turn. There are short delays and long. The moon has its periods of waning and waxing. The purpose of this passage is to illustrate the want of fixity in war by changes constantly taking place in nature. The comparison is not very happy. However, because the regularity of phenomena in which Sun Tzu mentions is by no means parallel in war. Chapter 7, Maneuvering. Sun Tzu said, "In war, the general receives his commands from the sovereign. Having collected an army and concentrated his forces, he must blend and harmonize the different elements, therefore, before pitching his camp. After that comes tactical maneuvering, than which there is nothing more difficult. The difficulty of tactical maneuvering consists in turning the devious into the direct, misfortune into gain. Thus, to take the long and circuitous route after enticing the enemy out of the way, and though starting after him, to contrive to reach the goal before him, shows knowledge of the artifice of deviation. Maneuvering with an army is advantageous. But Catherine, I need to finish reading. I'm almost done. Let me read. Damn it.